Hey, what's going on, y'all? This is Byron, and you are now watching the Tell the Story Doc podcast. Today, I get to interview somebody who has been very influential in my development as a pastor and just really my desire to dream, to go after new things, to do things that a lot of people say pastors can't do. I'm interviewing Pastor John O, even though he's not currently pastoring right now. You'll hear more about that in a second. I believe that he's still a pastor and he still pastors people. And that's probably one of his greatest gifts is pastoring people and building relationships and building teams. I enjoyed the interview with him, hearing about all the ventures that God has allowed for him to move forward on. And I'm glad that we're able to share this with you. So without further ado, the interview with John O.
Yeah, yo, thank you, man. Glad to be here, man.
Yeah, we've been trying to do this for a long time, right?
I know.
Man, I started this podcast a few years ago, and I remember the first time I saw John on, post-pandemic, I think, and I was like, man, when you gonna get in a podcast? And you've always said yes, but it's just kind of been like life, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, same, man. Yeah. It's funny because it's like you're one of the few people as well, too, right? As you just talk about the ability to, be a pastor, and I've always thought of myself as like a pastor, and right, I'm a pastor and all of these things. And you were one of the few folks that I saw who felt the same way, but also realized what it took. And so it's like, I know a lot of pastors that are great when it comes to, pastoring, right? That discipline and preaching and church. But then when they do want to start, right, things like this, they don't care about camera quality, or they don't care about audio, right? And no shade, but it's just, me and Trip talk about it all the time. And Rich, like, I'm just a fan of people that are like, craftsmen. So, say what you want about Kyrie and how you feel about what he does on and off the court. But when you watch him play, it's like, no, wait. This is a craftsman. Like, no, watch his footwork,
Right.
watch the way he puts the ball down on the ground, watch how, KD, say what you want about KD. This is a craftsman, right? Say what you want about James Harden, but his footwork, like, he's a craftsman. And I've just learned that, no, I enjoy talking to, being around, and being inspired by, craftsmen.
I dig that. You know what's interesting, and all this is coming together as you're talking. All of those guys are like in my era, I would say. Like if I went to the league or something, like we were all born around the same time. And I wonder if it's, we are we're mid-millennial people. Right. You know what I mean? So like you're technically millennial, right? You
technically, but I don't.
You wouldn't you're those people who like wouldn't call yourself a millennial.
I wouldn't, but then it's like lately I've exhibited the characteristics, right? It's like, nah, so what, you 40, you've done a job for 16 years and you just quit and you didn't know what you were going to do, right? So it's like, oh, yeah, maybe I am a little more than I thought.
See, and we're like mid-millennials, so we're like late 80s, I don't remember a time where, hip hop and R&B weren't there. I don't remember, you know what I mean? Like all of that. And we got to see technology come about, internet come about, and actually we feel like we had more opportunity to just kind of be freely expressive. Right. And then the next generations just add on to that. So I wonder if it's a part of that. I wonder if all of that plays in together.
Maybe. I don't know.
I don't want to be like Katie and Kyrie though.
Right.
So man, first question.
Okay.
Twitter or Threads?
All right, so this ain't the rapid fire round. So when it is, I will answer in more of a close-ended way. It's strange. Like Threads has great potential. Twitter had a great past. So it's like right now, I don't really know. I think the potential for Threads was that by the time Threads came around, like people knew how to navigate social media, right? So I imagine it's like when the car first came out, people was probably getting into wrecks all the time because they just didn't know like stoplights and how to do that. But then as time went on, it's like, well, yeah, the cars got better, but people had a history of, oh, wait a minute, we've had 15 years of train
Mhm.
or car wrecks, so now I know how to not right wreck folks. And I think it was like, yo, Twitter, it was probably a decade or more before I blocked my first person, right? Right? But Threads, it's like, oh, nah. In the first week, it's like, oh, I see this, I'm gonna block him. So I'm having a more pleasant experience on Thread than I did of Twitter. But it's like, yeah, Thread's got some things to work out.
Yeah. I asked that question. It's a little loaded because man, I'm a church planting junkie, and I've
Right.
probably looked at every video and went to everybody's website. And but the way that I got introduced to you actually was like through social media. And then I've seen how you've used social media so well to develop story, craft story, interact and engage with people. Sometimes start a little smoke, maybe unintentionally.
Bro,
So,
do you know what changed it for me?
What?
All right. My daughter's 2 years old, so this is what, 2019. I am we're on vacation, Seaside, Florida, right? Where this is the spot where the Truman Show was shot, right? So it's like, yo, peaceful, calm. I bring along Jane Eyre with me, right? So this old book, the book's not as important. I'm up late one night, yo. It's like 4 a.m. and I just cannot get enough of this book. I'm reading. And in the book, I come across Jane Eyre's use of the word Twitter. And up at this point, I thought Twitter was a invented word, but it's like, oh, no. And so I'm like, yo, what does this word mean? And it meant this like, yeah, like a kind of pointless sound that a bird makes, right? A bird Twitter. So a frivolous sound made by a bird or something like that. And then I'm like, oh, I'm taking social media too seriously. It ain't that serious. And overnight, that's when it changed for me. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I mean, there are ways that this could be used for the advance of the gospel, throwing out scriptures and all that stuff like that. And I can just be fully human on here and not have the pressure to do any of that. And that's what changed it for me.
Yeah. No, I get that. See, I don't think I ever approached it very professionally at all.
Right.
I remember the way I got on Twitter. I was a college student. I majored in mass communications, and my emphasis was on public relations. I remember going to class one day, and the lady said to me, everybody in this class needs to get on Twitter. It's this new thing called Twitter. I just went to there's a big journalism conference that happens every year. She's like, I just went to this. Everybody needs to get on. And I think one of my first tweets was like something stupid. So,
what y'all on?
Weird, but yeah, man, we'll talk more about like the Twitter thread thing offline.
Yeah.
Man, I watch a lot of interviews that you do, and I've been in the room with you a few times. I kind of know the story, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. I don't really want to talk to you about how you moved into pastoring or church planting or any of that. Yeah. What I really want to talk to you about is this turn that you've made, recently. I read this Quincy Jones book, maybe last year, I think. It's called 12 Notes. And in it, Quincy talks about how he started off as a musician, a jazz musician. And a lot of people don't know. They think Quincy Jones, they think Thriller, right? They think, him just being an old man blurting out stuff. But Quincy started as a jazz artist, and he was a very good one. He won a lot of awards, made a decent amount of money. But he talks about how people thought when he was kind of leaving that would be a turn that would be detrimental to his life.
Oh, yeah.
And really now, none of us think of Quincy Jones as a jazz musician. We think of him of all kinds of other things. I feel like when I've watched because I feel like I've been right here to see that
Oh,
turn.
yeah. Yeah.
You saying, okay, I am exiting this thing that I know so well, and it's really like a part of my identity, and I'm moving into something new.
Yeah.
And like I heard you say a few months ago, without scandal, without, heavy, this big sin thing. So like, explain to us how you got to that point where you're just saying like, you know what? I think this is it,
Yeah.
with the lead pastoring or
Yeah.
the church planting.
It's funny. I mean, I've reflected on this a bunch lately. And I think one of the things that I think of is it's like providentially just in my life, right? And it's just me. Um, nothing in my life has come easy. Now, I don't mean like, I grew up in the hood, parents was on drugs, I got out there. Like, that's not what I mean. I just mean like the ordinary stuff didn't come easy. I've stuttered, right, terribly my whole life, right? Talking didn't come easy. I was born with a thing called Erb's palsy, right? So the way that I was pulled out of the womb, right? My shoulder and elbow, right? Google Erb's palsy, ERBS, and you'll see that. So it's like playing ball all my life. Like basketball didn't come easy, right? I was flat footed, right? Running didn't come easy. And then like everything in life, it was just weird. Like my first cars, my college things, like things just didn't come easy. And so I've just learned that it's like, oh, if I'm ever going to do anything that I want to do, I've got to be creative at it. So with pastoring, it was this thing where it was, man, uh, the conversations about, is this it for me, started in 2019, right? So this is 2019. I'm a part of my third church plant, right? I am 35 and I'm on sabbatical. I got my 2-year-old daughter at the crib. This is the first sabbatical that I've had where I didn't have to travel to speak. I didn't write. I didn't do that. So me and her just spent a bunch of time together. And at that point, it's like, oh, wait a minute. I want a kind of life where I get a chance to do this more, not in a bad way. But I was also at a stage in the life of the church where, right, this is my third church plant. And I felt the same kind of discontent here. Not in a bad way. The church was good. It was growing, healthy, but I just kind of felt like, I just think I should be doing something else. And so I was fortunate to run this by my friend, Richard Mullen. So it's 2003 right now. 21 years ago, me and Richard were freshman roommates at Baylor. We've lived in the same city for 20 of the past 21 years. So I talked to Rich and it's like, oh, Rich, man, I'm starting to feel this. And then Richard brought up, he's like, John, I've known you 20 years and I know that you've got about a 4 to 5 year shelf life for anything that you do. And he was just like, yo, you're there for like 4 or 5 years and you build things. And once you build things up and they start to cruise, I don't know if it's you get bored, but something else grabs your heart and you have to be a part of that. So I kind of went back through my life and it's like, oh man, like that is absolutely true. And so at this point, I just started to discern, right? What is it that God would have of me? That I told the guys from day one of the church that it's like, yo, listen, I don't have to be the guy for the whole time. Like, if at any point y'all are like, I'm not the right guy for the job, then let me know. So I come back from sabbatical, I sit with the guys and it says, hey guys, there's things that I do well. I care for folks well. I preach well. I inspire well. But leading an organization, it's like, I don't do this well. And do you know what everybody else said? Oh yeah, we know, right? So I expect them to be like, yo, what a profound thing. Or I really wanted them to be like, nah, John, you're great at, but they're like, no, fam, like you are not good at this, right? Yeah. So at that point, it's like, all right, well, what things do we need to tweak and shape? And so we were in conversations about that. And then the pandemic hit. So we're ground zero at a church, no manuals for how to do this thing. And all of a sudden I'm filled with this, oh snap, I get to innovate and start from scratch and think. And that kept me for a few years. And then we come out of the pandemic and I just started to find myself in this place, right? If my life is a sheet of paper, pastoring, it takes up like that whole sheet, and you know it.
Yeah.
But there were so many other things that I started to do, but I could only do them in the margins, writing books, speaking, creating. And then the pandemic opened me up to a whole other world of creativity that I think the responsibility of pastoring for me suppressed. So then it was like, nah, like podcasting and creating art and different types of writing and building other things and curating. And the more and more time went on, the more and more I found like, hey, there's a part of my heart that was content with that being on the margins. But now, especially that I know that the church is stable and taken care of, I think I want to flip it, right?
Mm.
So I think that I want what was in the margins of my page to be front and center, and what was front and center to be in the margins. And so for me, it was started to have that convo. And at the end of 2021, I was like, all right, if this is going to take place, then I just have to do something drastic. So I said, hey, y'all, starting in 2022, I'm going part-time at the church. And so it's like the only way that I knew to take the administrative stuff off of my plate was to decrease my pay and pay somebody else to do it so that I could legitimately say, that ain't my job, fam. I'm not getting paid for it, right?
Right.
And then did that for a year. And then as time went on, this was a year ago this time, a dude in our church, a young dude, really a year ago, a few weeks ago, he hung himself and he killed himself. And got that phone call, and those 10 days, you know, from hospital to being pronounced brain dead, to being with the family, to preaching, to doing funerals, it just weighed on me. And then preached at the church on August the 14th, August the 15th, started the We Go On tour. So traveled 5 cities, talked about grief and hope. And it was when I was outside of the pulpit, outside of the church, I felt like that time would weigh down on me, but I was filled with so much life. And then when I was on the plane coming back to Atlanta from the LA spot, I opened up my computer email, and immediately, bro, my shoulders started to tighten. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I don't just think I'm tired of life. I do think that I'm tired of pastoring. And it was a season of just praying, seeking counsel, thinking through it, and just really, you know, the thought that I had was, I don't feel like we've done a good job as Christians, especially our brand of Christianity, to live as if life and ministry is seasonal, right? So it's like, no, like if you pastor, there is no dishonorable discharge other than retirement or death.
Right.
And I was just like, I don't think that that should be the case. And it was like, oh, this felt like the close of a chapter, the close of a season, especially as I learned more about who I was and what I like to do. And so it was you know, you look back on the faithfulness of God, and I was reminded, oh, every job I've had in my life, every single one I've created. I've sat behind a desk, written the job description, and it was like, oh, well, then I guess I know how to make money, and I guess things will just work out, and I don't have to have the next stage planned out. And so that kind of gave me the courage to just say, all right, hey, I don't know what's next, but I'm confident that I think this chapter is closed. And so shared it with the crew, made the announcement to the church, and was like, all right, let's see what's up.
Let me tell you something. Okay. I've heard you say that before. I've been in a room with you before. We've talked through that.
Right.
And I'll make a confession to you. Last time we were in Atlanta and we were there for, like a get together, I walked away very frustrated. And I walked away frustrated because I don't think it was a bad thing. But I feel like between listening to your story and then other friends that we have that they've walked away, and not because anything was like horribly wrong, but just because they felt like, okay, this season is up.
Right.
That frustrated me. Like, and I think in a sense it still frustrates me.
Okay, yeah, tell me why.
So here's why. The good part of it is I think it should frustrate me. I think it should frustrate every single person who has gone into ministry and pastoral ministry specifically, thinking this is a lifelong thing. And exactly what you said, like that there's no way to walk away from it with honor and dignity. So I think my frustration was like my paradigm being destroyed, right? But also it was frustrating to me because I feel the complete opposite. Like I do a million things. But if I had to pick one, it would be that. You know what I mean? Like, or my grandfather was a pastor for 63 years. He did 58 in one church. And I'm like, yo, that's what I want to do. You know, and then I see like, you know, guys like you and Rich, and I'm like, yo, why is everybody like, well, it feels like it's a wave of guys who are like, you know, right around older brothers who are like, hey man, you don't have to do this forever. And I'm like, but why not? You know?
No. All right. So, no. That was my goal. Like my goal was 50 years in one church. I remember Francis Grimke, pastored at 28, 50 years in one church. Charles Spurgeon, pastored young, all them years in one church. And anybody that knows me knows that it's no, John, like, no. From the time I was like 19, it's like, nah, I want to pastor, train other pastors, and that's it. And the problem with me is that anything that I'm in, up until this point, I fully believed that that's where I was going to spend the rest of my life. So college ministry. Nah, I'm here. This is where I'm going to spend my whole life. All right. Atlanta, Blueprint. Nah, I'm here. This is where I'm going to spend my whole life. Nah, West End. Nah, bought a crib. This is where I'm going to spend my whole life. Let's pick our funeral plots. And then it's like, oh, nah, it changed. And so for me, I do think there are people that have that lifelong burden and lifelong call. And I don't want to discourage that in anybody at all. But like what I saw was like, oh, but I don't think there's enough people saying that, oh, no. Lifelong call, it's great. Praise God for that. But if at some point things change for you, you haven't failed. You haven't not lived up. So that's all that I'm trying to do.
I'm not saying you're not right.
Okay, right.
But I confess that because I want to be open about the fact that there are things that can disrupt our view of something.
Right.
And it's okay to be upset about it, even if
that's good.
It's still, you know, like it works for you. You're probably right. There aren't enough people saying these things, and we're not seeing it enough. But just in my heart of hearts, I was like we were driving back home. I was like, why does everybody want to quit? Like, you know? And I'm an empath. I take things personally and all that stuff. So I was like, no, this is a shot at young Black pastors.
Right. Yeah.
All of that. But man, I really do appreciate you not only doing it, but being open about it, sharing it to the world, being clear about your intentions. Because a lot of people would say, oh, he started the coffee company, or, oh, he started this and that. And this is just his opportunity to kind of slide out. But what I felt when I read, you know, what you wrote, you know, over a year ago, I was like, nah, I mean, it's not about the fact that he's building other things. It's about the fact that he knows that this is not the place. And those other things are just an extension of his creativity and
Right.
imagination and all that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, all good things, man.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
Before
Right.
we get off the pastoring thing, I had to ask you
Okay.
this.
Yeah.
Because here's another thing that I've always admired about you. I do truly believe like you're a gifted pastor.
Yeah.
And, you know, especially in the Black church, the word pastor is so loaded with this idea of being a preacher.
Yeah.
And I love your sermons. I
Yeah.
listen to a lot of them,
Yeah.
but the impact that I've seen you make has been on people.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's blown me away is the people who you have had a chance to lead.
Mm.
And some of these people have arguably bigger platforms than you and maybe more influence in different areas. And
Yeah.
yet you are the person who they call to share their life with.
Yeah.
How has it been? Like, what was that experience like of finding yourself like pastoring so many people who are, whether they're influencers online or with creative arts or rappers, like Trip is your friend and you all pastor together and all of that. Like, what is that like?
Yeah. It's a tale of two halves. So my pastoral journey was really a tale of two halves, right? Started at 22, was done at 38, 16 years. In my 20s, it was humbling and personally humiliating to me when it was like, oh, feeling like that's what I wanted, right? That there would be times where I say I didn't care, but it's like, yo, I'm 20 something and I see it. And, you know, there's this mixture of I want to make an impact on the world and I want to be known and well liked and respected. And it was this thing where it was like, yeah, my 20s was spent a lot with like, wrestling through just like all of this, all of that, right? The desire to be well known or to be made much of. And I say it's humiliating because my 20s was full of a lot of attempts or things that I felt like were going to be my quote unquote big break, but they never really worked out. And it was just God saying, yo, relax, this ain't important. And then at 30, my brother died. And my brother was somebody that wasn't, well known at all by any stretch of the means. Like he didn't speak at the places that I spoke. He didn't have, the small platform that I had at the time. None of that. But it was like between the services we had in Memphis, Dallas, and Houston, and the encouragements that 8.5 years later still roll in. It was like, I remember at that point I saw it was like, oh, no, wait a minute. That's the purpose of a life well lived, right? To, leave a lasting impact, right? That it was like, it crystallized for me that when he died, it was like, no, the purpose of our lives is to prepare the people that come behind us to live better in this world without us than they did with us. And that was a thing that like shifted for me. And it was like, oh yeah, Lord, more than anything else, like that's how I want to live and die, that I just really want to have a profound impact on the lives of people, whoever you put in my way. And it's crazy because then it was like post 30, as I stepped into kind of this church and different opportunities that have come my way in the past 8 years. I've cared less and right. And so when I say cared less, it's like, oh, it's not like those prideful things or those selfish aspirations have gone completely. But I do think their fingers, right, that stranglehold is loosened, right, off of my soul in ways that I think have been helpful for me. So yeah, it's a tale of two halves. And the Lord used the death of my brother to help me prioritize what was most important.
Man, that's big. That's really big. I was in Memphis when we found out about your brother.
Yeah.
I was at another thing, but it was a big thing, and I can attest to because I served in Memphis right after, a few months after.
Yeah.
And his name just lived on throughout that entire time, you know.
Yeah.
And I actually knew of him before I knew of you.
Right.
Just because of my connections to Memphis and all that. So I can see, and I know how much, you know, he's made an impact on your life. So
Right.
I can see how that would make that shift in you,
Yeah.
which is incredible, man.
Yeah.
I watched the Hall of Fame speeches for this last class.
Oh, yeah.
Coach Pop
Yeah.
was there and he gave his speech. And to sit and, you know, he's very, you know, his personality is interesting.
Right.
But to know that Becky Hammond, who was going in, and Tony Parker, and, you know, all of these just huge names are there. And he's like, man, all I did was show up and, you know, stay consistent in these people's lives and challenge them every once in a while. And, you know, he didn't say this, but I imagined this, like God did the rest, right? So, I imagine a little bit of it is that, like, you were just there and consistent, and, you know, God did a lot of the extra work and all that.
That's what, So, I mean, that's what So, you hit the nail on the head. I've learned that, like, I look back and everything substantial or noteworthy that I've been a part of in my life has come a part of, or has happened as a result of being a part of a team. And I've just learned that my role on the team is like, oh, no, I'm a much better team builder than a team leader. Like, no, I'm great at getting everybody together and on the same page. But then when folks say, yo, where are we going to go? I'm like, oh, fam, that ain't my job. Like, I just want, we're all here. Yo, is everybody here? All right, yeah. Does everybody feel good about being here? All right, yeah. Okay, well, look, this is the guy that's going to tell us where to go. Let's follow.
I just call the meeting. I don't run the meeting.
No. You don't want me to do that, right?
Man, we got to stop calling you John O and start calling you John Co, because it's like co-director, co-leader, co-founder. Listen,
well, that's it. That's it. Like, that's the source, right? Yeah, I was at the coffee shop this morning, and so, you know, people are come up through and they look around. They're like, yo, this is beautiful. This is great. Like, man, I know that you must have worked hard on it. And I just tell them, it's like, man, the team worked incredibly hard, bro.
Right.
I want you to know I have nothing to do with how the inside of it looks. Like, I play a role in its hard work, but it's everybody out here that is working incredibly hard. And so in some ways, I just feel like, it's weird when you're, so when I think this is may have been what, like, Pop had alluded to, right? It's a, you know, when you play that role in an organization or in anybody's lives, you find yourself in this weird space, right? So when you're a visionary or, you know, storyteller, team builder, people on the outside of the organization, they give you way more credit than you deserve. Sometimes people on the inside of the organization give you less credit than you deserve, because they're like, nah, I did all the work, and it's like, well, no, yeah, I don't want to take away from all of that, but it's like, yo, but I did play a part. So you live in this space where you're constantly in conversations where you just have to balance, because there's no, like, proper assessment of the quantity of contribution that you made. So you stop worrying about the percentages, right? What's the percentage of impact that I had on their life? And it's like, hey, listen, I just want to have a quality impact on everybody I come in contact with in every organization. And I'll let the Lord sort out the math, and I'll let people be unchallenged in whatever they imagine my my worth is to an organization.
I dig that completely. I dig it completely. Now, as you're talking about all of that, this newer season that you're
Yeah.
in, seeing you be like an entrepreneur
Yeah.
and also just like dipping your toes in all kinds of ponds creatively. And
Yeah.
I feel like you're like just stretching your wings and you're like,
Man,
"This I can
it's
do.
crazy. Yeah.
Like, let's just do it." But man, the coffee thing,
Yeah.
that seemed to come out of nowhere. Like, I know you have a story behind it. I've heard it, but just from the outside looking in, it seemed to come out of nowhere at a very, I think, important time because we started seeing Black-owned businesses being pushed a lot more, and we are reclaiming coffee,
Oh yeah.
in our culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know that there are other Black-owned coffee companies, even in the South, in Memphis and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But what I saw you all create and the story that you told with it, with
Yeah.
Portrait, was refreshing, man.
Yeah.
So how did you like not get to the idea of being a part of a coffee company, but like what made you say like, nah, this is it. Like this is like I'm going with it. Or was it not a this is it moment? Was it just like a yeah, let's try this too?
No. All right. So it was the this is it moment came in 2018. My wife and I adopted our daughter in 2017. She was born premature. So November came around and we couldn't do our 10-year anniversary trip in November. So we waited until she was old enough that she could stay with my wife's mom. And in May 2018, we go to Spain. I use all my Sky Miles. We go to Spain. And while we're in Madrid and Barcelona, right? So it's like at this point, right? Folks that know me, I've had a deep love of coffee for, 12 years. So we go there. And in addition to seeing all the sights, one of the things that we did every day was we went to multiple coffee shops. It's like, yo, I just want to go to the coffee shop. And as we went in, that was when it was like, yo, we in Spain? Why do all the coffee shops have the same hipster look and feel? Like, yo, like, what is this? And that was when I like came back home and it's like, no, listen, like we need to start a coffee shop in the West End. I literally called this guy, Jeff Schinnebarger, who does a lot of stuff with nonprofits. And he came by the shop for the first time today, called him 5 years ago and was like, yo, we got to do this. Help. And then when we came back, I've just found myself in a spot where it's like, all right, come on, there's got to be more Black people involved in this. And I knew Prop, but Prop was the only one. And then I started reading. And when I started reading, I found out, coffee originated in Ethiopia. It primarily grows along the equator. It grows where Black and brown folks grow. And then I found out how much money was made from it. And then I found out who pockets all the money that's made from it. And it's like, yo, that felt like an injustice. And then I'm talking with my partner now who worked with a group that was run by a guy that was an Anglican priest at the time. And he talked about the stories that they told, but what really went down on the ground. And it's like, yo, somebody's got to do something. So that was when I linked the coffee supply chain to the socioeconomic disparity that we see in Atlanta from north to south. And I used MARTA and I sat down with my two other partners at the time and I shared the MARTA, the metaphor, illustration, and Marcus. He looked at me and he's like, yo, John, stop there, bro. He's like, that is $1 million metaphor. And I was like, right, that kind of felt like, when when you're on your way to prom and your mom says you look like $1 million, it's just like, well, thanks, mom. But you had to say, I mean, I don't really look like $1 million. That's what it felt like. But then every time that I shared it, bro, people's eyes would light up and they would repeat it and share it. And then we like launched a Kickstarter and we had a pop-up and it was like, we launched it just like, hey, we're trying to raise this money. Kickstarter got a hold of our joint and was like, yo, this is great. They put it on the front page. And that's when it's like, oh, snap. Like, this is something.
Yeah.
And then that was when I kind of stepped back and it was like, yo, wait. This is something, but this something was propelled and fueled by an idea and a story and a team. And that's when it was like, oh, wait a minute. If you can tell a good story and you can build a team, then it's not. So this was what changed me. It's not just that you can do anything that you want. It's that you can do everything that you want. It's like, no. I can be a part of everything because it's like, oh, no. Hey, look. I'll take care of this story. I'll kind of build the team. I'm not going to lead the team. Yo, let's launch it. Just let me own 10% of that and I'm cool. All right, I'm going to do that here. Let me own 40% of this and I'm cool. No, 30%. And now it's like, I don't actually have to do a bunch of different things. I can actually do the same two things in a bunch of different places. And now it's like, oh, I'm a part of everything that I want to be a part of because I'm co-directing.
So you're not roasting coffee. You're
I'm not roasting. So there's somebody that is, right? The people that are roasting take it very seriously in their crafts. All right, so we're in Madrid, and this is where it kicked in for me. 2018, it's like, yo, let's start a coffee shop. Now, prior to 2018, I would have been like, all right, let's start. All right, what do I personally need to do in order to build this thing up? And then I started to think, it's like, all right, I like coffee, but I don't really know how stuff works out. So if we're going to do this and I'm going to be at the forefront of it to get as nice as I want to, I'm going to have to quit my job at the church. And I've been pastoring for over a decade. I was in a doctoral program. So I was making, all right, decent money. And it's like, all right, I have to quit. I'd have to start as a barista, probably making $12 an hour. And it's like, I've got a mortgage and a family and I like to eat. So maybe spearheading this thing is not going to be the way. That the only way that I can do this is if I build a team. And I'm fine taking a minority stake in what I build and own. And that was when it clicked. It's like, oh, wait a minute. I've held myself back from so many things because I thought that the only way or the best way to bring an idea into the world was to do it exactly how you wanted to.
right.
No. I'm fine bringing ideas into the world, even though none of them are ideally all of what I hoped it would be.
Mm-hmm.
But 70% of what I want to bring into the world is better than 100% of nothing ever brought into the world. Right. So
that's tough for me. I would be, I think I'm learning that lesson now.
Yeah.
To where you are, but because I think naturally we just want to have control. We wouldn't even admit that, but deep down inside, it's like, I really want this to be this way.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. There's a lot of things that I'm like, I really dislike this part. However, I love this part and it exists in the world. And if I had control, none of it would be brought in because for me, I've got this disease where I'm great at creating to-do lists. I mean, you look at all the journals that I have on here, and I've got the most extensive, well thought out to-do list. I'm just terrible at actually checking things off and getting things done.
Hey.
So I'm like, all right, if I ain't actually going to get anything done, then I'm okay if it doesn't look exactly like I thought it would.
So the storyteller piece that's one of the biggest things you bring to Portrait. And even as your tagline, pouring a new narrative, is centered around that story.
Mm-hmm.
I see like the books that you promote and read. I've read your books. But one of them, probably the most important book you share with me was a story-worthy book.
Oh my goodness.
You know, so I work in branding and advertising. own a branding and advertising business, and I read that book on the way back from where were we, Chicago,
Oh yeah.
and I just kind of ate it up. But it's interesting because your foot in entrepreneurship and all the other things you're doing is really just based off of that idea of story. Like, is that and then you can kind of connect the dots with like, man, you preach for all of these years, like all these things you've put together and crafted, even the idea of Cornerstone, and I know Rich is a big part of that, but you telling the story of that church kind of put you all in a different place. Is that something that you feel like has always been there in your life? Like, have you always been intrigued by story?
Yes. 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 So 100%, I always have. And I think what gave me the freedom, like it was in recent years, I realized, oh, wait a minute, that's the through line, right? Oh, story is the through line. And so then that like helped me to rethink of, oh, this is why I love what I love and why I love it, right? So, this is why I love anime, right? It's like, it's not about the fighting, right? It's no. It's Japanese. They do such a great job of backstories and complex stories. Like, Dragon Ball Z was the hood favorite, right? But this is it, right? There's a higher level of criticism that goes into it. And what you see is every other character in Dragon Ball Z, they kill their enemies. Goku doesn't kill anybody.
Right.
Goku makes every one of them his friends. So Piccolo becomes his friend. Vegeta becomes his friend, right? Boo becomes different, and on and on and on. And so it's like oh, wait a minute, there's something about that story. And so I've always just been intrigued by stories. And like, yeah, that was a thing that I just felt like, oh, wait a minute. No. That's the like through line of preaching to even the role and function that I love to play in the beginning of an organization, the inspiration part. And that's when it was like, oh, and now that I know that it was that, it's like, oh, now my building of that can be less incidental and more intentional. Now it's no, let me become a master craftsman when it comes to storytelling. Let me give myself to this discipline the way I gave myself to playing ball or things like that. Yeah.
Nah, I love that. It's difficult for me, but I love it. I love telling stories. I'm not a huge fan of consuming stories,
Oh,
which makes I'm not as good of a storyteller because of that.
right.
So I've never read a fiction book, I don't think all the way through. Maybe like
Oh my goodness.
maybe like 2 books in my life, fiction, that I've read all the way through. So we just bought Chronicles of Narnia.
Yeah.
And we've had to restart it like 6 times because I just, I have a hard time tapping into that. But you personally have challenged me in that to kind of move towards those stories so that I can, one, understand story, but also just kind of be enriched by whatever that creative thing is.
Yeah. This is one thing that I'd say. If a story don't capture you, bro, move on, right? Find one that does. So don't feel the need to like restart. Like, people love Lord of the Rings and they talk about it. I cannot read a full Tolkien book because he loves to describe like irrelevant stuff. And it's like, fam, you're spending a page describing how the grass feel, like move on. So I've just learned it's like, oh, I actually don't like him, but I love Orson Scott Card, right? There's this book called Ender's Game. A 10th grade teacher put it in my hands. It changed how I felt about fiction. Like I read it and it's like, yo, it's so smart and intelligent. I love all the Sherlock Holmes novels. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Like I love her historical fiction, Toni Morrison. Like, there's all of these people that I've learned to love. And what I've learned is like, man, yo, life is too short to force yourself to read bad books, especially if you ain't in school anymore, bro. So if it don't grip me, right, I put it down and I find something that does.
Yeah. Well, maybe you can give me some suggestions because I haven't figured it out. I like historical fiction. That's about as far as I can go. I like Toni Morrison. I like what's her name? Man, she was at Bethune-Cookman too. I can't even think of her name. Zora Neale Hurston.
Yeah.
I love her, but I have a hard time with like science fiction or fantasy or any of that. It's just I'm like,
all right, look. Yeah, okay, look. Ender's Game. All right. That's one, like, you seem like you would enjoy it. It's super intelligent. He's smart. He does a great job of like getting behind the characters' motives. And it's I'm not gonna tell you the plot of the book because if I tell it, it's gonna sound really science fiction-y. But it's like, no. That stuff is just the stuff to get you in your seat. It's an intelligent book, well written. I think that you would like it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of books, you've written a couple.
Yeah.
And man, the prayer book that you wrote.
Yeah.
We kind of include that in our we don't have an official packet when you join our church or you come to our church, but we have that. The Creative Minority by John Tyson.
Yeah.
And then Knowing God, we kind of package those together and say, like, here's what you need.
Yeah.
But I've read a lot of books on prayer.
Yeah.
Yours, it's just like really just real. You know what I mean? Like when I was trying to figure out how to do this church planting thing, there was nothing in me that thought, hey, we should just have a monthly prayer meeting and not cancel it, right? And after I read that book for like the third time, I was like, maybe we should do that. Maybe we should do a monthly prayer meeting. But then we go on, and that's your latest book. And it was a little challenging for me. And I feel like you and I live like the complete opposite lives. Like interest or, you know what I mean? Like, but I like it though. It's like intriguing to me. I'll talk a lot and then I'll pass it to you. I feel when I read the book, I was moved, and I know a lot of your story. I have, even earlier you said, man, everything in my life I've had to work hard for. I feel the opposite. I feel like everything I have not had to work hard for anything except for what I'm doing right now. Ministry, church planting, all that stuff. Everything else has come easy. Like you talked about having a stutter. I won oratorical contests all through my childhood. I've never been an athlete, but I was the guy who's like, oh yeah, I can dunk. Like, I mean, that's, so as I was reading We Go On, I wanted to embrace it personally and not just something I could pass on to other people. But I have yet to experience some of the levels of grief that you described. And I felt a little, I don't know if guilty is the word, but it was just, it was a different type of book for me to grab hold to personally. Now, pastorally, I get it. As you are sharing this story to the world, what are you trying to get people to embrace about the grief journey? And speak to me too, because the people who have not experienced that level of grief, like how would you pull them into that story?
So I think there's two things, right? With the book, what I'm trying to help folks see is this. Nothing in life is going to be everything that you thought it would be, right? Life is broken and it's fractured. So it's like none of the victories are going to give you the sustained emotional higher feeling of completion that you thought that they would. And none of the losses, if we see them rightly, are going to drive you to the grave like you think that they would, right? So I wanted people to learn that living the life of their dreams meant learning to enjoy the life that you have, not life as you wish that it would be. So what like that first grief did, and I started the book with the death of my brother, is I feel like that grief, right? Those tears kind of wiped the scales from my eyes from thinking that life was a thing where the inputs match the outputs, right? And so I really wanted to, on one hand, help people that are experiencing the similar grief to know you're not crazy if you feel this way. You're not alone if you feel this way. You're human. And so I just wanted to say the quiet stuff out loud so that folks would be like, yo, I'm not crazy, right? But I also, like, I had a professor in seminary, Howard Hendricks, and one of the things that he said was, education is a time bomb set to go off at a later date.
Yeah.
So I wrote that book in a way that was accessible because I really wanted people to be able to read it, to grab a hold of it, and to feel like the disciples did after Jesus left, when they were like, right, there were time would go on and they would be like, yo,
This is what he meant.
that's what he was saying. Now
Yep.
it makes sense that I really wanted people to have that. So I just constantly share, no, listen, like, yeah, if you haven't gone through a grief like this, it's that you haven't gone through it yet, right? That word grief comes from the same word, the same root word that we get grave from, gravitas, right? It just means heavy and weight. And I think people that are able to walk around with this pastoral, like, gravitas in a good way are those that have learned to carry grief well and minister to those that are bogged down by the weight. So I really just wanted to write a book that confronts people with that, but also puts it in a way that people aren't scared of it. So I worked through, right? And it's like, so it's like, yeah, I mean, right, somebody like you would appreciate it. The actual book, I passed on a couple of publishers because they wanted to put it in a paperback because it would just save money. And what I would say is, oh, no. It's got to be in a hardback. It's got to carry weight in folks' hands.
Yeah.
They didn't want pictures and stuff on the inside. They wanted normal pages. It's like, no. Look, it's like got to feel embossed, like it's substantive. It's got to be pictures. People got to be thrown off by the
That's why I like
beauty.
you, man. That's why I like you.
Yeah.
You know, I would have been like, "Oh, you want my book? Yeah. Print it. Let's go."
Yeah, no. So it's like, no. Grief is heavy, but grief, when you learn to live with it, it unlocks so much beauty, and it's confusing because you don't expect grief and beauty to be roommates, right, in the same sentence. And what I wanted is for people to, like, feel that, so that the book would be accessible, right? And so, yeah.
Do you feel like We Go On is going to be, and this might sound weird, but like I see it possibly being your knowing God, your like your staple book, and it seems like it's because it's so much of your story. You know, you're knowing God, your reason for God, your desiring God. It seems like so much of the story that is natural to you because it's your lived experience.
Yeah.
And it's what you're sharing with the world.
Yeah. So I've usually never been a type A person where I kind of set goals and accomplish them. I've stumbled into everything substantial that I've ever done in my life, right? But I have outlined, no, I think these are the next 7 books that I want to work on, which is uncharacteristic for anybody that knows me. I'm a procrastinator. I suffer from it terribly. There is no cure for what I have. It's stage 5, right? Yeah, terminal. But with that, I've sat through, and one of the things, like, I wrote We Go On because I wanted to write a book about hope, And I started with like, grief is the unlikely pathway that led me there. And coming out of a pandemic, the handlebars, what people grabbed onto was the like grief stuff. And so I stumbled into starting to talk about grief. And the more that I did, the more that I found it gave people hope. And so, I thought We Go On was going to be that. And I learned so much in the process that I'm actually in the beginning phases right now of writing a companion guide. It may be a sequel or a prequel that like, so it's like Tim Keller wrote Reason for God.
Mhm.
And a few years ago, he wrote a book, Making Sense of God, which he said is actually the prequel to that. And out of all of Tim Keller's books, like, may he rest in peace, right?
Yeah.
Lord knows how much I love that man. Making Sense of God,
Fire.
that's the joint I put in people's hands, bro. It is incredible. And so it's like, this was at the end of last year. I'm talking to Tim, and it's like, yo, Tim, this is what I noticed about you, fam. You're smarter than almost anybody else that I know. And it's like, but you didn't get a PhD. You got a D-Min. You didn't write an academic book. You wrote a bunch of popular level books. You didn't write academic commentaries, even though you read more books on all this stuff than the rest of them. You wrote in the God's Word for You series. And it's like, why? And he was like, well, John, like I see myself as a translator and a bridge builder. I want to dive deep into all the deep stuff, but I want to build bridges and make it accessible so everybody can jump in. And so that's why I wrote the books like that. And he was like, yo, I actually, from what I know of you, I think that you should try to do the same thing. And so for me, it's like, so that's where I'm at right now. It's like, all right, I'm finishing up a commentary on Ecclesiastes for the God's Word for You series. It was due a long time ago. My stage 5 procrastination got the best of me. I'll be done by the end of the year. It should come out next year. And then in conjunction with that, I'm working on a supplementary book on grief and hope. The working title in my head right now is Grief Doesn't Have an Expiration Date and Other Uncommon Comforts, right?
Yeah.
But just, so my hope is that this lane that I've stumbled into would be something that the Lord uses.
Yeah, I definitely believe that can happen. And right now you are doing a great job in that space, you know. And what I like is, man, you making it a little fly. Like, I mean, I hate to just put it like that, but you know, there's people popping up at Barnes and Noble trying to sell their book or whatever. And you're like, nah, let's go on tour. Let's get Swoop. And, you know, like, let's make this into something that's cool.
Yeah.
And, you know, I haven't made it to any of your shows or anything like that, but man,
we got 14 this fall.
Yeah, so y'all check those out. We're gonna put those in the bottom in the description. But man, I admire it. I'm like, man, that's dope. I'm all about like, man, if people say if this is what people expect, let's just like go outside of that.
Right. Absolutely.
Like, and not just to push against the machine, but just because, like, if our imagination takes us there, why can't we do it? Like, why can't we do it this way? Why do I have to like sell my book at a church conference opposed to like, no, we're gonna set up in this little club and have dope cameras and music and all of that and bring people into the experience? Because what you're talking about, it's not just about like what I can sit down and learn while I read a book. It's this full experience that we'll walk through as we're thinking about grief and as we're experiencing grief. So I love all that stuff, man. Well, look, I don't want to take all your time for your day. I know you got plenty of other stuff. We're going to wrap the interview in a couple minutes, but I got to ask you like some quick fire questions. All right. You ready?
Okay. Ready. Come on.
Jono is a self-proclaimed sneakerhead. I don't know how like So I see you in Jordans. What's your favorite Jordan?
My favorite Jordan is so what's hard is like I've got a couple. Okay, so there's no way to just say one, but it's the Jordan one, the Chicago, right? So the just basic, the red, white, and black. That's my favorite Jordan 1 silhouette. The Jordan 11s, we call them patent leathers. They were not called the Concords when they first came out. We call them the patent leathers, right?
Right.
That's my favorite in that one. And then the cement Jordan 4s. Those ones to me are the ideal, best basketball shoe. The one flaw is that the mesh part, there is no way to preserve that from oxidation.
That's
it
fact.
Yellows. So it's like, if you want the crispness, it's funny. Like, it's like manna, bro. Like, no, you have to wear it. You cannot store it.
Are you a collector or you just wear them?
No, I wear them. I buy shoes to wear. Yeah, I don't buy shoes to sit on the shelf.
Man, I was walking out of the house. My wife was like, "You gonna wear those today? It's about to rain." I'm like, "They're shoes. Like,
they're shoes.
Gotta put on shoes."
I buy them to wear. I got the what's it called? Some of my favorites to wear are the Blazers. The why am I going blank on it? Virgil Abloh, the Blazers. What was that? How am I going blank on that?
I can't even help you because I don't know any names.
Off-whites.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So I got the off-white Blazers. I got them for retail price. This is 2017. So it's like 6 years ago. And yeah, no, I wear them. They are not pristine.
Yeah.
I could have sold them for a lot of money, but I didn't. And I wear them. They are beat into the ground, but I wear my shoes.
I'm a Jordan 1 guy, and if I could wear Jordan 1s every day of my life, I would.
Right.
I promise you I would. Second question. Who's your favorite Houston Rocket not named Hakeem Olajuwon?
Oh, man. Favorite Rocket, not Hakeem. James Harden.
Oh, yeah, you are a Harden fan.
James Harden. Yep. What?
All right.
Yeah.
No explanation needed.
The accomplishments that he's had as a Rocket, I do think outpace what Tracy McGrady did, what Steve Francis did. Even though I love both of them, I thought Tracy McGrady had a high ceiling. But what James Harden did really was special. And if Kevin Durant did not go to the Warriors, James Harden would have a ship. His narrative would be different. If Chris Paul went vegan a couple of years earlier, James Harden would have a ship. If James Harden and Chris Paul worked it out and Chris Paul stayed the pandemic year, the Rockets would have a ship. But I ride with James.
I always wish that Dwight was healthy when he was with the Rockets. I would have liked to see Dwight and James win together, but I'm with you. Houston has like everybody: Chris Paul, Clyde Drexler, everybody you can think of played for Houston.
Yeah.
Go to coffee. What is your this is what I'm going to when I don't have any specialty, anything, like this is what I'm grabbing.
I'm grabbing like naturally processed Ethiopian or an anaerobic coffee, something that is very fruit forward, funky flavors. People want like their everyday cup to be basic. I need my cup like I am drinking a naturally processed Costa Rican right now that tastes like berries, and it's I've drank the same cup of coffee every day for the past 2 weeks.
I dig it. I dig. Are you pour over? Are you like, or you don't have a preference?
Pour over, but also if you have the right machine, you can do an amazing drip coffee. So right now I use the Mocha Master KGB V. It's a machine. Mocha Master is this are these machines that are handmade. I believe they're Dutch, but they do one thing. Like it has an on switch and an off switch. No timer, no clock. It's like no. This is just to make coffee. No time. Like you have to set it by getting up and pressing the actual button. It's not going to be ready when you wake up. You got to wait on it. So yeah,
I dig it. I dig it. What's the last book that you've read, or the book that you're reading right now? Right.
Oh, pull it out. The Wild Edge of Sorrow. What's the subtitle? Rituals of Renewal and the Sacred Work of Grief. There was an author, Mehrsa Baradaran. She wrote the book, The Color of Money, Black Banks and the Racial Wealth Gap. We built a friendship through the years, and she was like, yo, John, I came across this book. You need to read it. And this is the book recommendation of my entire year so far. It is absolutely incredible in the way that it talks about grief. So that's what I'm on right now.
I dig it. Last question. Now let's get out of here. Who do you want to see on this podcast? And is this a person you can make some connections to get on this podcast?
Yeah. Let's see. Do you know who I think? There's a couple of people that I think would be great on the podcast. I think Tripp would be a fantastic guest on the podcast. I think Rich Perez would be an incredible guest on the podcast. I think you've already got T coming on the podcast.
Yeah, he's next week.
Okay, yeah. Tripp and Rich are just both incredible people. They've also left the pastorate happily, so I don't want to add to your frustration, right?
We're going to do a whole series of like,
no. Those are two of the most thoughtful people that I know.
I dig it, man.
I'm connection.
I appreciate your time. I just want to tell you, man, I appreciate you, and I get encouraged a lot by you. And also you're a person that when I see the things that you're doing, how you're doing them, I get inspired. Like, I'm like, we got to do something. We got to make this happen. We got to try this thing, It's like that healthy level. I think healthy. It might be a little unhealthy. I don't know. Level of just like, not competition, but just inspiration.
Yeah.
Just like, man, I can kind of color outside the lines, do some different things, push a narrative and push the edge on some of these things, man. So I appreciate you being a great example, not just to me, but I think like there's a generation of church planters that you've inspired and pastors that you've inspired, both younger than you and older than you.
Yes.
If you look at your Twitter, they're like people, coming at you like, twice your age and But I appreciate you, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you, man. This really was an honor, and so I think I hide it well when I'm on podcasts, but there's a lot of them that I'm on that at the end of it, it's like, oh my goodness, like this could not have been done sooner, right? If that was the case for yours, you would never know. I'm not gonna tell you, but no, this was incredible, brother. And like I said, I just love you as a craftsman. You're thoughtful, even the way that you set all this up, man. I love it. And I'm also glad that for the first time we've both been on screen and my camera's crispier than yours. So
look, you're a Sony
take
guy.
great
So
pride.
You have the Sony look. I have the Canon look. So, but that's all good. It's all good.
Love it.
Well, thank y'all for watching the Tell the Story Doc podcast on All of Life TV. We got a great chance to interview John O. Maybe this is not the last time.
Oh, definitely not. Anytime, bro.
Yeah, if you want to hear more about what Jono is doing, there's a list of links in the description, whether it's coffee or books or tours or Creek Collective or whatever else he's doing. I suggest that you kind of check it out and see some of the things that he's doing. And don't forget that as you're living, live all of your life in Jesus Christ. God bless.